are now tuned in to the Angela D. Wharton Show, where we talk about love, life, survival, and everything in between. I am your host, Angela D. Wharton, and if you're ready to be inspired and empowered, then let's go, y'all. Hello, and welcome to the Angela D. Wharton Show. I am your host, Angela D. Wharton, and this is episode number 5 of the 2020 series, which is 20 Truths That I've Learned in 20 Years of Surviving Sexual Violence. You guys, I am super duper excited to have our guest on today. She is a great friend of mine. She is a woman of God. She is a wife, a mother. She is just everything. She is literally superwoman. I am just like so blown away that she said yes when I gave her the call to be on the Angela D. Wharton Show. So may I present to you Miss Cherished Flight herself, Miss Candance Greene. Hi, Candance!
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. So, Candace, now,
Yes.
I know who you are. I know all of your accomplishments. I know just so much about you, but can you just take a moment to let our listeners know who you are? Tell us about who you are. Tell us about Cherished Flight and anything else that you'd like to add.
Sure. Well, my name is Candance Greene. I am originally from Nashville, Tennessee. Kind of moved to this area in Baltimore on a flip of a coin, literally. And when I arrived in Baltimore in 1998, I was in a very dark space. And just really I knew God through my mother. I didn't know God for myself. And it was at that time where I began to develop a relationship with God. I met my husband, got married, had children, but wasn't really happy with what was going on with me. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I started praying for God to show me and reveal what He needed me to do. And from that came Cherished Flight. And Cherished Flight actually started as a book editing company. I did that for many years, probably about maybe 5 or 6 years. And then it made me happy anymore, and I shut it down. And I said to God, what do you want me to do? And from there came the Cherished Flight that you see now, the site that was created to encourage women, mothers, and career women, and just so overwhelmed by the world that I wanted to create an oasis on the internet, a place where women could go to receive encouraging messages from God. And that's really what Cherished Flight is. It is an oasis in a chaotic world where you can go to be encouraged and be replenished and refilled with the peace of God.
Wow. And yes, I am a fan of the Cherished Flight podcast, you all. Candace, I'm so grateful to you for your obedience and actually doing the podcast, because it's really helped me on so many different occasions. I mean, because you already know, working, being a mom, being a wife, and having other outside activities, the church and everything, it puts a lot of stress on us. And oftentimes we're like, feel like we're being pulled in so many different directions and we get stressed out. But I will tell you, my sister, that your podcast has really been instrumental in helping me keep my peace. And I just thank you for that.
Praise
And
God.
absolutely. And not only that, but it has also inspired me to start the Angela D. Wharton show, because I mean, I did like a little pilot
Yeah.
about a year or two ago or something. Yes. And then after I started listening to your podcast, I was like, you know what? You know, I could do this. Candance has given me inspiration. She's motivated me to go ahead and do this. So I did. I started the Angela D. Wharton show back on my birthday in January, and it's been going pretty good. So thank you. If nobody else has told you that you've been an inspiration to them, I'm telling you that you've been an inspiration to me on so many different levels. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's all God, and
Yeah.
I'm just very happy that you decided to take that leap.
Yeah. It wasn't easy, but I just thank and praise God for, giving me the push to do so as well. So again, the title of our show for today is, or for this episode is, I've learned to find peace in the midst of the storm. So Miss Greene in Cherished Flight, the podcast, I mean, she is an expert on finding peace, right? So that's like the main reason why I
Right.
have brought her on the show, so that she can help us find in whatever storm that we are going through. I mean, so many of us are dealing with so many different things on all levels, that if we can have someone, or we can find a way to reach out to the Lord, he is the one who will give us peace. And so Candance is going to share with us on today how she has been able to find peace in the midst of many different storms, and also just share from her heart whatever the Lord lays on her heart. She's going to share with us on today. When we think about a storm, right, I actually went to the dictionary and found the definition of a storm, and it reads that a storm is a violent disturbance of the atmosphere where strong winds and usually rain, thunder, and lightning can actually appear. So as a kid, I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, and I remember whenever a storm would come around, my grandmother would tell us, like a thunderstorm, like a thunder lightning storm, my grandmother would always tell us to get low and be quiet, right? Because she didn't want us
Yes.
to get struck by lightning or anything like that. We just had to just get low and get quiet. To me, like, storms really, really scared me. But, having my cousins there and having like other family members there, because we all had to get low. We did what Mama said. We all had to get low and get quiet. It really, really helped to calm me. Now, as a child, Candance, how were you able to find peace? Or were there any kind of self-soothing um, skills that you learned as a kid?
Well, my coping mechanisms were not very positive. So the thing I turned to when I was a child was food. And that was where I found my sense of comfort. Like I said, I'm from Tennessee, so um, I had a grandmother who cooked all the time. She taught me how to cook, so I started cooking, and from that, um, eating. And so that's something that I still, as an adult, am trying to shift, because I don't necessarily need that coping mechanism anymore. It's just now a habit that I am prayerful that God will help me to break. But that is how I learned to cope with different things when I was a child. Not necessarily a good thing, but at the time it was what I had.
Yeah.
It was my go-to.
I see. So can you remember any time in your life as a kid where you were where you remember being in a storm, like figuratively? And did you have to find peace in the midst of that storm anywhere, like maybe bullying or anything like that? Do you remember any kind of situations like that where you had to find peace? And if so, how did you find peace in the midst of that storm?
Um, there were many instances of bullying, but there came a time when I had to face my bullies. Um, one in
Yeah.
particular, wow, I haven't thought about this person in a long time, but I lived in an apartment complex, and there was this little girl who lived upstairs above my apartment. She was mean. She was mean to everybody. But in my apartment complex, we had immigrant families, and this particular little girl was Vietnamese. And my neighbor upstairs would always pick on her and everyone else, and I was afraid of her. And then one day, I just got tired. I got tired of her,
Yeah.
and I confronted her and said, "Look, you're gonna stop picking on me, and you're gonna stop picking on this little girl right here. It's gonna stop right now. It's gonna stop today." My heart is beating really fast, but because I'm facing this thing that this person that I'm deathly afraid of. Now, mind you, she's much smaller than me, but for some reason I was just really afraid of her. So she says, well, the kid lingo, who's gonna make me? Me, I'm gonna make you. And so we actually fought that day. And that was one of my first fights. But I will tell you, I have no recollection of her after that. And it's kind of like when you face your fear and you actually fight through it, God removes it. So that little girl, like I said, I haven't thought about her in years. I don't remember interacting with her after that fight because that was it. I just needed to face that fear. So I think with a lot of childhood things, when you look back on some of your experiences and you realize, whoa, I actually faced the person that I was the most fearful of, and that was it. That was it.
Yep.
So I don't even remember if she bullied anyone else. I just know for me, I was done with her.
Right, right. God stepped in and removed her from your life. Once you faced that fear,
Yep.
he stepped in. And
Yes.
isn't it
And that's what
amazing how,
happened.
yeah, you go.
No, I was gonna say that's what happens when we really face our fears. They dissipate. Whatever it is you're afraid of is really not as big as you might think it is.
Mhm. And courage is feeling that fear and doing it anyway. And you are just surprised. You'll be surprised at what happens on the other side of that fear once you actually face it and just do it, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's just amazing to know how God has his hand on us, even as children. God has his hand on our lives. There's so many, when I look back over my life, there's so many times where I've been in situations where, I know that it was nothing but God who could have brought me out. He's just so amazing.
Yes.
I mean, even as a kid, as a teenager, even as a young adult, I know that it's only God. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I remember that you have shared with me that you are a survivor of incest.
Yes.
Being a survivor of sexual violence myself, I understand that, sometimes we feel like we are in a constant storm, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, we always feel like we are in a storm. Share with us just a little bit of your story and
Sure.
yeah, and then just tell us how you were able to find peace within that storm of being a survivor of incest.
Okay, so for me, it was every summer, my cousins would come down from Chicago to Tennessee. And that's the typical, send your kids down south kind of scenario. But for my cousins, it's a little different because I really didn't look forward to them coming because I knew what was going to happen when they did arrive. The cousin that um, molested me was actually another female cousin. So I had this other barrier where I felt like telling someone um, I didn't know how to express it. So that's part of where the coping mechanism came in with food as
Yeah.
well. And so as I got older and went to college, it wasn't until I was around 17 or 18 that I actually told no, it was actually older than that when I told my family. But it took me a long time to understand what happened, that it happened because you try to talk yourself out of it, that it happened, that it wasn't my fault that it happened, but also the road to forgiveness
Yeah.
because I was an adult. I had moved here, like I said, in 1998, and I was on my job. And at this time, this is before texting and cell phones were really big, but messaging had just become the big thing. And so my cousin found me through Yahoo Messenger, and she was asking me to pray for her because she was in an abusive marriage. And I thought to myself, what? You want me to pray for you? I don't like you at all. Why would you come to me to pray for you? And God, because before that, I had prayed for God to bring peace into my life, bring peace into my life. And then she contacted me to pray for her, and I'm saying no. And God said, you asked me for peace.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm bringing you peace the way I need to bring you peace. So you pray for her. Well, it started out with me praying grudgingly. And then I started to really empathize and really become very sympathetic about her situation, where I would get to work and send a prayer every day. Are you okay? Are you looking for places to move? Did anything happen last? Just really, really checking in to make sure she was okay. And it got to a point where I didn't harbor the feelings of resentment anymore. I truly did forgive her. And also, God helped me to make peace with what happened, but also, God used me to help her. So now she's out of that marriage. She's remarried, happily remarried, and is living a very peaceful life. So there is hope and peace on the other side of that type of trauma, but you just have to allow God to work it out of you and work his peace into you to replace everything that happened with his peace. He can do it, he will do it. He did it for me because, trust me, I did not want to pray for her, but God
We
had other plans.
imagine.
And he brought me peace over that portion of my life.
Yeah, that is incredible. Because he answered your prayer.
He
You asked
did.
God to give you peace, but this was the way that you were to get peace, by him sending her to you, because you can't fix what you
For
face.
right.
You can't fix what you won't face. So you had to face it, her, in
Mhm.
order to
Mhm.
fix it, in order to heal from it. You know, I'm sure it was, listening to, your explanation, and you telling us about it, I'm sure it was very difficult. You did not want to do it, but God
Not at all.
had to do it in order to
Mhm.
heal. It's the only way.
Yep.
I've
Yes.
had I've had several conversations with survivors, and I tell them all the time, it's not going to go away on its own. You know, you trying to suppress it and act like it didn't happen, not acknowledging it,
Mm-hmm.
is only making matters worse. It's
Yes.
only going to resurface someplace else in your life, whether it resurfaces as depression, thoughts and attempts, self-medication in terms of drugs and alcohol, perhaps promiscuity, um, anger, like,
Yeah.
I mean, what is it? Unhealthy relationships. It always
Mm-hmm.
resurfaces in our lives when we don't deal with, the fact that we have been sexually violated. It always comes back. So
Right.
that God was able to help you to forgive, because he actually, did the same thing for me. I knew that as a Christian, when I got saved, I knew that I had to forgive this person or these persons that hurt me. I didn't want to. Oh no, oh no, no, no. I didn't want to, but I knew that I had to forgive them as a Christian, but I also had to forgive them for my own healing. That's
Yeah.
listening, you'll forgive in your own time. We're not telling you that you're required to forgive them right now. We're not telling you that.
Right.
Everyone's healing process is different. Everybody's going to go through it at a different time. But we're just letting you know that this is something that is going to come your way. Forgiveness is key. Amen, Candace?
Yes. But also, you don't choose that healing road. God does, because He knows what's best for you, and He
Yes.
knows what way is best for you to heal. And it might not be the way you think.
This is true. It may not be the way you think, because God doesn't think like us. He already has the plan. We just get in the way when we try to help him along. God doesn't need our help, right?
True.
We get in the way. So Candace,
Mm-hmm.
again, I absolutely love the podcast. Like, it is just amazing. And your topics that you use, that you speak on, are timely so timely, and it just blows me away, because I'm like, does she knowing that, we hadn't had a conversation or anything. I'm like, does she know? Okay. But one episode in particular, really, really resonated with me. It really spoke volumes to my life in what I was going through at that particular moment. And it's episode number 24. Speaking of forgiveness, the title of episode number 4 was, or is, It's Time to Forgive. So everyone listening, go to the website cherishedflight.com and pull up episode number 24. It's Time to Forgive. You got to listen to that. Well, listen to them all, but make sure you listen to that one. Now, this is the one where you talked about your visit with your dad and how you, um, thought that you had forgiven him for, not being a part of your life and that sort of thing. And, I had the same situation with my dad. And, he was not in my life growing up. Every now and again, I would hear from him. Every now and again, we would chat. Or I would hear him on the phone with or hear my mom on the phone with him, asking him for money for new glasses for me, or whatever I needed. But it wasn't until I was raped at 24. Yes. When I was raped at 24, he became active in my life. I'm not sure who told him, because I didn't tell him, but somebody, maybe my mom, I don't know. But he started to become, more active in my life. He never missed a birthday. So let's see, I was 24 then. So he has not missed a birthday since 24, never missed Christmas. Then my kids came along. Well, actually, when I got married, he paid for the reception. Like, he has really been trying. And we've had conversations. I don't know if you had a chance to read the book, Candance, but I believe it's chapter number 7, where I talk about when I turned 30, and I told myself that I was going to call my dad and I was going to have this conversation with him. I was going to just wear my heart on my sleeve and just tell him how I felt growing up and just get it all out. I was just going to tell him. And then when our conversation was done, he's just going to give me a great big hug and he's going to just hold me. And I'm just going to be daddy's little girl from that point on.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I had in my mind. Like, I had played the whole thing out. But of course, that didn't happen. Right?
Right.
So I had the conversation with him, shared from my heart. And I told him how I felt. And I told him that, I really wish you were there, but you weren't. And after I got finished this whole conversation and just like pouring everything out and laying it out on the line, I didn't get the big embrace. I didn't get the big hug. What my dad said to me was, what did he say? Something along the lines, I can't even remember it verbatim, but something along the lines of, your mom did a great job raising you without me. Yeah. So for me, that all I heard was crickets. That. And I thought that I forgave him. But after listening to the podcast, I realized that I did on a certain level, but I was still harboring resentment toward him.
Yeah.
I was still harboring resentment toward him for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons that I harbor the resentment against him is that I feel like he was instrumental in me not being able to spend time with my grandparents, meaning, well, his dad passed away when I was a baby. My mom told me that when I was an infant. My grandfather passed away when I was an infant, but my grandmom passed away, when I was older. But I really didn't have a relationship with her. I really didn't know her. I really don't know like his side of the family like I would like to. And I'm a very family oriented person, and I just feel like I was robbed of that. And it wasn't until like listening to your podcast I realized that's it. I'm still harboring resentment toward my dad for so many different things. So how were you able to find peace in the midst of your storm with your dad and him not being there? So tell us about that.
That was a very long journey, extremely long. I once I got married, well, my relationship with my dad was on again, off again, on again, off again. And then when I got married and we decided we were going to have children, I said, okay, well, let me just try because I need to be able to purge all of these feelings that I have because I don't want to take that into motherhood. And I don't want to pour it into my child because I was pregnant at the time. Tried to see my dad. It didn't really work out. He lives in Tennessee, so when I went home, I would try to see him, and it just didn't work. And then we were estranged again after my second child was born. We were estranged for quite some time, and I started thinking, I need to release this blob of feelings. I cannot keep going with this. And so I started praying. I was like, God, just remove it. Just remove my feelings about it, because I can't keep taking this with me every day, everywhere I go. It was affecting my marriage, and how I would project certain things onto my husband that had nothing to do with him, just me and my abandonment issues, and thinking that my husband was going to abandon me like my father did. So I would try to do things to make that happen.
Yeah.
But my husband is one of those men who's like, okay, that has nothing to do with me, and I'm not going anywhere. So, you know, don't worry about me leaving, because I'm not leaving. And so it just took a long time for God to kind of work it out. It's kind of like on the inside, I felt like, have you ever cut open like squash or like spaghetti squash? I don't know if any of your listeners have ever done this, but inside you keep pulling and pulling. It's like strings and strings and strings of just squash all in
Yeah.
there. And when you think you've got, there's still more to get. That's how I felt on the inside. And it just got to a point where I just had to pray for God to give me peace, even if I don't reconcile with my father. Give me peace about the situation. I can't do anything about the past. If I can do something about how I'm reacting to life and to things and to my children and to my husband now, removing my expectations for a relationship with my dad, just remove it. Like, that was hard. It was very, very, very difficult. That's why I was so surprised. I think some things happened in his life. He had a near-death experience. Um, and then my eldest nephew graduated from high school, and my sister-in-law invited him to the graduation. And then soon after that, he reached out to me to say, hey, next time you're in town, can you stop by? Okay. So I did. And our interaction was a little cautious. I was cautious because I didn't want to put back on the line. But again, I had asked for peace in the situation, peace about the relationship. And so God brought it about in a way that I didn't expect. Um, and so when I was about to go home for that particular visit, I was about to come back to Baltimore. That particular visit, he called me and he said, I want to meet you for coffee before you leave. I said, okay. So I met him at a Starbucks. And then that's when he shared his feelings about everything that happened in my life, in our relationship. I shared mine. And he was able to hear and say everything that you'd want your estranged parents to say. But I think what happened to him was that near-death experience, and that he had been given another opportunity to come back and make it right. Things didn't move until he was ready. They didn't. And guilt has a way of keeping you bound.
Yeah.
It really does. Guilt and fear and shame, all those things. And so I could have been that person to say, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I'm 40 and you're just coming to me now. That's 20 some odd years of, estrangement. And now you want to come around? But I ask God for peace. And that also means to try to look at a situation from someone else's perspective. And so that's what I did. And if I wanted peace, then that meant letting go of, like I said, those expectations of the type of relationship that we had, and just to make peace and put all the cards on the table and walk away feeling like I've released it. And so I think for you, Angela, when you were talking about your father and how he, after he learned about your being raped, came back, was trying to be involved, was involved in your wedding, really has been trying to reconnect. I think that was his way of apologizing to you and trying to make it right. And so it didn't come the way you wanted it to, with that come to Jesus conversation and then the hugs and the tears, but it came in a different way where he's trying to show you that he does love and care for you. So he's in your life at a point now where God wants him to be in your life. And where when you were a child, maybe he was too damaged to be a parent for you, but now he's there. And so really, and sometimes when you hear what you've done to people to hurt them, it's hard. It's hard to take that in and to really say, okay, this is what I've done to hurt this person. And some people can't take that information in and have compassion for the other person. Their guilt keeps them, there's like a barrier. The guilt acts as a barrier. And so with your dad, he's trying to reach out to you through his actions. Yeah. But you just have to ask God to change your perspective and see how he's trying to do so, how he's trying to connect with you. And maybe you can rebuild now on this new level without the expectations of, you know, having that father-daughter moment, when you have an opportunity to have a different type of father-daughter moment together.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think that once he heard the story of, you know, being raped in the woods at gunpoint, and, you know, that I could have been murdered, and, you know, he would have never been able to, like, see me ever again. Just like you said, your dad had that near-death experience, and
Yes.
that kind of turned things around for him. And I think that once my dad heard the story, he was just like, oh, wait a minute. I have another chance. So let me try and connect with her. And I think that's exactly what happened. But
yeah.
I do agree with you. You know, we can't change the past. It's done. So we have to move on from here. And I do appreciate him, you know, really being there now, because even for the girls, for my kids, he never misses Christmas. He never misses their birthdays, ever. If we don't see him in between that time, you best believe he's coming Christmas, and he will be there for everybody's birthday. And, you know, I really appreciate that. I do. I really appreciate that about him. But I'm going to do better. We're definitely going to do better, because if anything ever happened to him, I wouldn't know what to do. I don't know what I would do with myself, even though we don't have the relationship, or I didn't have the relationship with him that I wished. I always wanted to be daddy's little girl, always.
Mm-hmm.
But
yes.
I am daddy's girl now. I do have the opportunity to be daddy's girl now, so I'm gonna nurture that.
You should tell him that too. Tell him that.
Yeah, you're right. I'm going to tell him, because he's actually going to come over, because Layla's birthday was yesterday. So he's coming over this week. So that would be the perfect opportunity to tell him that.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. See, that's something else that that's another gift you have. So when are you going to blog about mommy or daddy-daughter relationships? Looking for a blog on that.
Yeah, that's coming too. It is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay. All right, good. Because I know if you've helped me with it, you know, I know that there's countless others that have been, you know, empowered and inspired by it as well, by your work. Yay.
All God.
I hear you. Oh, I hear you. So let's talk about marriage. Yes. Let's talk a little bit more about marriage. So marriage can sometimes feel like a storm. Don't we know that? It can feel like
Yes.
storm after storm after storm. It's like they just keep coming, especially in the first few years of marriage. Though they can be very difficult because we are learning each other. We're learning how to cohabitate as one.
Yes.
But 2 Corinthians 4:17 tells us, for our present troubles are small and won't last very long, yet they produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them and will last forever. So we know that trouble doesn't last always and that the storm will end. So can you share with us a time in your marriage where you felt like the storm would never end, but you were able to find peace within that storm as you were going through?
Wow. The time that comes to mind is 2007.
2007.
2007 was the beginning of a very rough time for us. We had our second child in March. 10 days after he was born, my husband's father passed away.
Oh.
And then my husband lost his mortgage business because that's when the mortgage industry just imploded.
Yep.
And we also ended up having a car accident.
Oh, wow.
And so 4 things back to back to back. I was not working at the time because I was a stay-at-home mom, and my husband had a lot of trouble finding a job because he was overqualified for everything. So dealing with becoming a mom of 2, postpartum depression, my husband is dealing with grieving the loss of his father. Yes. The loss of his dad, the loss of his business, and losing a job, not being able to provide for the family. And we had a house that was we had been in this home for 3 years. It was tough. It was really hard. I did not know how to support my husband through his grieving. I didn't. I don't think that I was a good wife during that period of time. I ended up working part-time for a church that we both attended, Empowerment Temple. It kind of happened on a whim where I said, hey, can I write for the magazine? And from there, I ended up getting a part-time job. My husband worked a hodgepodge of jobs at that time, but we went through a financial crisis. But my husband had the peace. I have never experienced the type of faith. I had never experienced the type of faith that he displayed during that period of time in our marriage. He was very quiet, but would always say, "We're going to get through this. Everything's going to be all right. We're going to make it through." And I kept saying, "Okay, do you see what we're going through right now? What are you talking about? We're going to make it through." But I think what I learned through that period was that God never abandons you. And having faith in God sometimes stretches you to the point where you feel like you can't be stretched any further. We had blessings that came our way. People were praying for us. We would receive surprises in the mail. People would just say, God placed it on my heart to just send you this check. And what? How did you know we didn't have any food? And people would just stop by with things. And our eldest son to daycare, which we didn't even have money to pay. I don't even know how we paid our mortgage during that time, but one of my friends called me and said, hey, I was just cleaning up my house and I found this $50 bill. It belongs to you guys. And I said, no, I don't have any money. I didn't leave any money at your house. And she says, well, God is telling me to give this to you. Where are you? I had just driven past her house. I'm down the street from your house. She says, pull over. She comes with the money. I didn't even have money for gas. So that was money I needed for gas. I would, I learned so much about how God will meet you in the midst of your storm, in the midst of your trouble. He will provide exactly what you need. And it may not be an overabundance of what you need. It is exactly what you need at that time. And I think that period of time really created a place of thanksgiving for us. It was hard. It was hard. It was hard. Long suffering is hard. But on the other side of it, we can look back now and say, only God got us through that season. And I would say that season was a very long time. It was more than a year. It was more than 2, 3, 4 years. It was the 2007 was the beginning of our long suffering season, which we have come out of, thank God. But God really showed up every time we need him and built my faith. And watching my husband go through this season really taught me what faith in action looked like. Because he's a very faithful man, faithful to God. And so just very grateful for that time that we were able to experience it together and come out on the other side together. Stronger, married, gone. Yeah.
Amen. Well, Candance, I tell you that your story that you just shared really, really resonates with me because we've been there as well. In fact, we're moving through at this moment. I can honestly relate to every aspect of your story that you just shared. I mean, and we know that it was only by the grace of God, that we made it, that we're making it through, and that He, touched people's hearts and tell them to, drop money off, or they need this or they need that, telling the before and after care directors, you can hold off, things like that, because they don't have to do that.
Yes.
But because of the God that we serve,
Yes,
He makes sure that we are provided for. And it may not be what we want, but our needs are met. Our needs are met.
yes.
Girl, oh, I tell you, God is just incredible. And He always knows.
Yeah.
Always knows. Like God, you just never, ever cease to amaze me.
Mm. Right when
So
you
I
need
think
the most, he'll swoop in.
I know. Just like when you don't even see any light. I mean, you don't even see the tunnel. Forget the light at the end of the tunnel. You don't even see the tunnel.
Yes.
But He just always makes a way. Always makes a
Yes.
way. Always makes a way. So how many
Always.
years, if you don't mind asking, how many years are you guys celebrating?
15.
How long have you been married?
15 years.
15?
15.
Wow. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you.
That awesome. Darnell and I will be celebrating 12 years in September.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah,
Happy
yeah,
early anniversary.
yeah. Thank you so much. And we still get to get along. We still laugh. We still have a good time in the midst of everything. We still have a good time. So God is good.
Yep. You have to
Yeah.
create those moments. You
Yeah.
have to.
And for those out there who think that marriage doesn't work, look at Candance, look at me. Marriage does work, but you have to put in the work.
Yeah, you do.
Both parties have to put in the work. It's not a one-sided thing. It's not. All parties
And
have to put.
and one very important point: being married does not make you happy. That's an individual choice. And that whole myth of you marry your Prince Charming and you live happily ever after. Really, if you're not happy with yourself, it causes a lot of damage in your marriage. I've learned this just um, for myself, and the issues I might bring into the marriage, and how I've had to examine myself to say, okay, I brought this in, and now what do I need to do to mend things? And I think being able to be self-reflective and um, apologize and change your behavior, those are three very hard things to do, but it's a must in order to be married and to create a happy marriage, a working marriage, because you're evolving, both of you, together and individually. And there are times when my husband always says, sometimes you have to be committed to the commitment of marriage. When things aren't going right and you're not communicating properly, you got to be committed to the commitment. And that can be, those are really difficult times of marriage, but God still works and changes hearts, and he tears down walls, that we sometimes build between each other. And you just have to be willing, like you said, to do that work. And it's hard, but worth it in the end.
It is so worth it. It is so worth it in the end. Yeah. So let's move on to motherhood.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So you have 3 kids, right?
Yes.
Yep. You had 3 kids. I have 2. So yeah. So we've been very busy mothers. So but being a mother is definitely a blessing, but it can be one of the most difficult jobs that we could have, because motherhood doesn't come with a manual. And honestly, we don't always get it right. We don't always get it right. And every child has its own personality. They're all different. So what worked with one child may not necessarily work with the other. So we have to try and figure it out. So can you think of, or can you share with us a time where perhaps you were in a prolonged situation with one of your children or one of your kids, and how did you find peace in the midst of that? Like perhaps there was an argument that took place, or a punishment, or something that happened where it was like prolonged. How did you find peace in that? How did you resolve it?
I think I'm in the middle of that now because our children are 12, 10, and 6. And I think with our eldest child, he's like in that tween time. Not quite a teenager yet, but he's not an elementary kid anymore. And so there are lots of changes that are taking place. And don't let people tell you that only girls have emotional moments, because boys do too. And so with my eldest son, he's very different from his siblings. He is very cerebral. All 3 of our kids are intelligent, but Sakari, our eldest child, is very, very cerebral, very internal. He's very much like his dad, very internal. And when he is ready to talk, he talks. But there are lots of times when he's just He just doesn't. And so as a mom, I think what I'm learning is his rhythms are different from mine, and I can't force him to talk when he doesn't want to. I'm learning how to be a mom of a tween.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I make mistakes with him. I think he's the one that I'm concerned about the most because he's so cerebral, and I worry that he doesn't necessarily get it with the world, and just his place in it. So, I still have not made peace with this, and I'm still working on this. And being a mom of three extremely intelligent and vastly different children, and how you go through seasons where your relationships change. So you might have a closer relationship with one than the other, but then you have to kind of shift and say, okay, what can I do to reconnect with this particular child? Or what can I do to make all of them feel like I love them all equally? Because you do as a parent, but they might not feel that.
Yeah.
So what am I doing that's not helping them to know that, that I love them, or that I care about them, or that I want to spend time with them? Because you have to keep pouring into them to say, okay, you need alone time with mom, or you need alone time with dad, because the three of them fight for our attention constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I know, okay, we need to go on a mommy and son date, or we need to go on a mommy and daughter date, or we need time together. Just like with when you're married, there are times when you might act out because what you really want is time with your spouse. Kids do the same thing. They want time with their parents. And so just learning those cycles, but also not beating yourself up for getting it wrong.
Yeah, that's
You have to give yourself some slack and say, I'm learning too. I've said that to them. Look, I've never been a parent before. I am learning how to do this too. So work with me, bear with me. I messed up. I'm sorry. And coming back to your kids and say, you know what, I apologize for whatever. And they appreciate that, to know, okay, well, you make mistakes. You're not perfect, and you're not trying to um, pretend that you're all perfect for us. We see that you're making mistakes, or that you're acknowledging that you've made mistakes. Now, I don't know if they're seeing it on that level, which they're probably not. I am.
right.
And so I just know that it is truly a day by day process. Important for them to have that time alone where they are able to process things, and not necessarily having to talk to mom and dad about, you know, every moment, just to have their moment to decompress. When they decompress, they come back to you and say, okay, mom, this is what I'm really feeling. I just wanted to create an atmosphere of open communication. So when those times do come where it's really important for them to talk to me and to my husband, they don't feel hindered by anything. They can just come and say whatever. And they do come and say things where I have to have this look on my face like, okay. But in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is my child saying this.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it means allowing yourself to make mistakes and not beat yourself up about it. Make changes when you see things aren't necessarily going the way you want them to. And being honest sometimes with your kids to say, look, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're in this boat together. So we're going to make it right.
Yeah.
And that for me is what I've been trying to do with these three kids of ours, our three musketeers.
And they're all so adorable, especially that little one, the little princess. Yes.
Yes.
Two girls, so I have a thing for girls. Yes. But I want to go back to what you said about just um, being able to say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'm learning. Just I don't have a manual. I'm learning. This is my first time being a mom too. Like I'm learning this whole process, and I think oftentimes because of the way that we were brought up and some of the things that our parents have shared. Well, my mom had told me, I find myself like saying those things to my kids. They
Yeah.
ask, well, why do I have to do that? It's that because
Because
I
I said,
so. Right, right. But our kids are more inquisitive. And of course, they're very intelligent. Not that we weren't, but I get the why. Why? But I don't understand because you said so. I'm like, yes, that sort of thing. But I do find myself bringing some of my mom's parenting skills into my parenthood with my kids, and it's just doesn't always work. These are some newfangled kids. Yeah, these are some newfangled kids, but I thank you so much for sharing that because it really opened my eyes because sometimes we do beat ourselves up as parents, when we don't get it right. And it's okay that we don't get it right because we're not
yeah,
always going. And we have to forgive ourselves for those times that we don't get it right. Because, our kids, they don't care. They'll come back and give you a great big hug, and you're still feeling bad about what you said or what you did. And they'll come and give you a great big hug. Like my oldest daughter, so affectionate, and she just wants everybody to be happy, and she always sees the good out of every situation. Like, we were having technical difficulties, and she came over and she gave me a great big hug, and she said, Mommy, it's going to be okay, it's going to
yeah,
work. you know I didn't prompt her to say that, but that's her heart. That's how she
yeah.
is. And another prime example is I'll share this quick story. We went to Denny's a few weeks ago. We went to a Denny's restaurant, and she observed our server being yelled at by her manager. And
Hmm.
she just kept looking. She's looking and she was listening, and she's very concerned. And so when it was over, she said, Mommy, he was mean to her. And that was very unnecessary. So I want to do something to make her happy. And I'm looking like, oh,
Wow.
okay. So, we had dinner and, we're just chatting and everything. And next thing you know, she took a napkin and one of the crayons, because, they give the kids like the little paper busy sheet, coloring sheet and all that to keep them busy.
Right.
So and the crayon, and she wrote the server a nice note. I mean, I don't remember exactly what it said for verbatim, but it said something to the effect of, thank you for serving us. We're very grateful and appreciative of you.
Wow.
Love, love Asia. So it's like, wow, Asia, that was very nice. And she said, so when should I? She said, so when should I give it to her? We'll give it to her when she comes back. And she gave the napkin to the server, and she read it, and the server was almost in tears. She's like, oh my god, I never got anything like that. I really needed this in this moment. So I mean, even at a young age, God is working in her life, and
Yeah.
I learned so much from her, just by her being able to see the good in so many different things, even as a little kid. So, I mean, we don't
That's her.
always get it right, parents, but
She's an encourager.
yeah, she is. She really is. She's an encourager. Yes, she is. And, we don't always get it right as parents, but, we must be doing something right
You are.
with her. So,
Yeah.
you know, I just, I just thank God for allowing us to be her parents. She's awesome. And so is her little sister. She's awesome. And her little sister wants to be just like her big sister. And it cracks me up. You know, they fuss, they fight, just as your kids, I'm sure. They go at it, but they also love on each other and they also protect each other as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Miss Candance, I'm so sorry that we're like at the end of our podcast. I don't want to let you go, but I know you have to because we are mothers, we are wives. There's still things that we have to take care of. But before I let you go, why don't you share what you have coming up? Like, do you have anything coming up? Any events? Do you have anything, of course, new podcasts coming out? But why don't you share with us what's coming up next for you?
Well, I am going to be doing a couple of things. I have a book that I'm almost finished with. It's a devotional. Um, so that will be coming out in the fall, and also have a I'm going to be doing some peace break video conferencing. So if people want to learn how to take peace breaks and just kind of talking to people about the peace break, I'm going to be doing that in the fall as well. And continuing to encourage people through the podcast, Cherished Flight, the podcast. It comes out weekly. Okay. So I did switch the name to Cherished Flight, the podcast, maybe about a month and a half ago, just because I wanted to align my entire brand. And so really kicking that off, episode 4 will be out this week. And I'm just excited about what God is doing. Some great things are in store.
Yes, they are. And I'm looking forward as well because I am a huge fan. I am.
Well, thank you. I'm a huge fan of yours as well.
Oh, thank you, Candance. You know, you've been so super supportive of Phoenix Ministries from the start. In fact, I don't know if I ever shared this with you. In fact, one of my very first speaking engagements was with Madame State's Attorney, Madame Mosby. Um, I don't know if you remember when she first was doing her campaign, she had the event where she brought all the women together.
Yes.
And it was at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And when that was in the planning stages, one of her team members reached out to me and said that my name was suggested, like was a recommendation for me to come and share my story and be a speaker. And I was like, me? Somebody recommended me? And I found out that it was you recommended me to be the speaker for the event. And I was just blown away. So I thank you because that was like a start for me, sharing my story. And it just really kicked off just everything that I'm doing now. So I thank you so much for believing in me and for just all that you've done to support not only Phoenix Ministries, but also Angela D. Wharton.
That's right. And you telling your story is bringing healing to other women and allowing them an opportunity and the space to share their own stories. So thank you.
You are so welcome. So tell our listeners how they can connect with you.
Well, you can find me on my website, cherishedflight.com, CHERISHEDFLIGHT.com. I'm on Instagram at cherishedflight and Twitter, Cherished Flight, and also on Facebook, all Cherished Flight. So once you plug that in, you can find me there. You can also subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, and SoundCloud, all at Cherished Flight, the podcast. I hope you join me and subscribe and let me know that you're listening. Go to the website, let me know what you think, and follow me on Instagram. I post consistently. on Instagram, so people can just get a little bit of encouragement and peace throughout their day. And I encourage people to take their peace breaks, which is a moment where you step away from your desk, your work, your phone, you step outside and you breathe and inhale the peace of God, exhale your stress. It's your moment to pray during the day, really, to reconnect with God so that He can align your day with His peace. Because we know work can be a stressful environment, but when you take that moment to step away and pray and reconnect with God, it just changes your day. So follow me on Instagram. I remind you to take your peace breaks and just put a little bit of encouragement, like I said, an oasis of peace in the middle of a chaotic world.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, my dear, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners before we go, our viewers before we go?
Just thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate you so much.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you so much for having or for being here on the show. I'm so honored to have you as a guest. And with that, everyone, this has been the Angela D. Wharton Show, episode number 5. I have learned to find peace in the midst of the storm. So be sure to follow me on Instagram at Angela_empowers. I'm on Facebook at Angela D. Wharton. And I'm also on Twitter, Angela Empowers. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening in. Remember, God loves you. I love you. And always, always know that you are amazing, and always, always be yourself. Until we meet again.